people who've conducted job interviews, what's something that someone did or said that made you instantly decide to not hire them? The interviewee told me how he stole goods from a store they worked at, put them in their buddy's car, called the cops so his buddy would get arrested, then got with his buddy's girlfriend while the buddy was in jail. All this in response to the question, tell us about a time when you had an ethical dilemma. What did you do and what was the outcome? Apparently, his buddy was cheating them on their shared drug business, so he told us what he did when his best friend wasn't splitting the profits 50-50. Candidate kept boasting about how many languages he speaks, even though it was not a requirement for the position. I finally asked him which foreign language he was most fluent in, and he replied Spanish. I followed up with a simple question asked in Spanish, which he was unable to answer as he didn't speak Spanish. Had a woman come in and start going through everything wrong with the coworkers at her previous place of employment. All of them, as far as I could tell. As she left, I advised her not to do that on her next interview, and thankfully she seemed to get that. For this interview process, the guy had to do a presentation on his laptop, but his battery was dead, so he asked if he could plug it in. One of the panel members had to go under the boardroom table to do that. This particular member was female, and the candidate says, well, look at that, I've only been here 5 minutes and already got a woman on her knees. For context, it couldn't actually get worse, of course, but it was extraordinary how bad this experience was. It was for a public sector position, in health, and a considerable part of the role was procurement and contract management. Candidates were told how to prepare and what the assessment criteria would be. Part of this was confidentiality, data and record security. When the guy started his laptop, we had to wait while he shut down Discord, Steam, and a host of other gaming-related apps that kept booting. As he started his presentation, in the background, the startup music for COD or something blasts out of the speakers, so he cancels that and carries on like it was perfectly normal. His desktop was also littered with invoices and quotes that clearly showed company and individual identities. He finished his presentation, and no one on the panel asked a single question. All we said was, thanks. On his way out, he turned and said, I think I fucked that up, didn't I? No, champ, you were golden. I worked at a big box retailer and got called up to the service counter to deal with a customer who was upset. This was only a couple minutes before I was scheduled to conduct an interview with a potential new hire. I get up there, and this woman is berating the employee behind the counter, referring to her with names like this bitch, etc. I asked her to lower her voice and please stop being disrespectful to my employee. She isn't happy, but she does eventually calm down enough to be reasonable, and we resolve the situation at the service desk. I turn to walk away, thinking we're done here, and she goes, anyway, I'm here for my interview. I can't believe this is actually happening. It seems like an awful rom-com movie type thing, but this rude-ass woman actually expected me to proceed with interviewing her. I'm sorry, ma'am, that position is no longer available. I work in healthcare analytics and was doing a virtual interview with this person as they were from a different region. Mid-interview, they shared a screen to demonstrate the type of work they were currently doing, which I did not ask for, nor did she ask us if we were okay with her sharing her screen first. But the screen she showed us had clear patent identifiers, health card numbers, etc. We immediately shut that down. Patient privacy and data security are absolutely paramount, and that level of cavalier treatment of sensitive patient information immediately disqualified her from being considered, and we had to submit a report to their institution afterwards. Back when I was in corporate, a candidate for a middle management role walked into our conference room and before even a handshake or intro, asked if I was there to take notes for the boys' meeting. Suffice it to say, the interview didn't get much better from there. When asking about how he'd handled issues with managers in the past, he started by describing the age, ethnicity, and weight of his manager. Entirely irrelevant, so that's going to be a no from us. I wasn't the one conducting, but I had a job interview for a driving position. And in the parking lot before the job interview, I accidentally rear-ended the manager's car. Safe to say I didn't get the job. I asked them what's the hardest thing you've ever overcome. Candidate totally froze up, seemed to be struggling to come up with a good interview answer. Then just throws his hands up and says, screw it, cocaine. I will never ever forget that dude. He got hired and was a totally stand-up guy. Honest, hardworking, smart as hell. He asked me about that answer and I was like, dude, you nailed the rest of the interview and you overcame an addiction. Kind of an opposite story of what the thread's about, but his honesty was refreshing. At the end, I asked if he had any questions for me. He said, "Yeah, that sign on the front door, is that a rule or more of a guideline?" I was confused. I said, "Push to enter? Probably a rule. That's how doors work." He said, No, the one that says no guns allowed on the premises. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm kind of dressed like a cowboy." I hadn't noticed, but then I did. Cowboy boots, a western-ish vent. He went on, "I have holsters all over. For me, putting on my guns in the morning is like putting on my underwear." Important lesson here is never mention your guns or your underwear in a first interview. I thanked him for his time and escorted him out. I think it's safe to say you shouldn't mention those in any level of interview. I interviewed a middle-aged woman who was an abject "see you next Tuesday" to my junior project manager, who I typically forced to do the first level interviews, while I watched in silence to see how they conducted interviews and how they handled themselves. It was a way for me to teach them without cramping their style, and also for me to see what their style even was in the first place. The woman was a solid 10 plus years older than my junior PM. As soon as the call started, she began nagging on my PM immediately. "Oh wow, you're still a baby. I wasn't expecting to be interviewed by my own child." That was strike one. And personally, I would have ended the interview right there. However, this was a training exercise for my junior, and they opted to push through it. A few sentences later, the woman made a remark along the lines of, "I've forgotten more about project management than you've probably ever experienced in your career thus far." Again, I was eager to cancel the interview, but my junior PM seemed to breeze right through it. Where I intervened immediately was when the woman requested to speak to someone with more seniority about the company so that they could ask me questions personally. My PM tried to gently say, "Ma'am, that's what the next phase of the interview process will be. This is the preliminary call to get a feel for your background, your personality, and your familiarity with our toolsets." The woman responded with, "Honey, listen, I know how to use the tools, and I don't think I need to justify my experience to you." At this point, I entered the call. She immediately tried to greet me with a faux sense of warmness, and I just cut right through the bullshit. I said to her, "I'd like to just let you know that we'll be stopping the interview at this point. I've been listening in to the call, and not only is your conduct incredibly disrespectful, but your conduct isn't welcome on my team or anywhere within this company. Best of luck in your search." The most satisfying moment was when she started to try and say something, and I just ended it mid-sentence. I don't have time for that BS, and I'm not going to expose people under my care to that sort of toxic nonsense. When asked why they thought they were qualified for the job, they replied that they weren't, but it was okay because the position wasn't a career goal for them. They only needed it to pay the bills while they found something else. It was a teaching position. I once interviewed a flat earther who admitted in the interview within the first 10 minutes that the main reason he wanted to work in aviation was to be closer to airplanes so he could prove they were holograms, since clearly they shouldn't be able to fly since the Earth is flat. To this day, I'm not sure if he was just trying to show someone, "Hey look, I'm applying for jobs, so I don't know why they all keep saying no," or if he genuinely believed it. But either way, I let the interview go on for like an hour, and just let him rant his little heart out. Ended up going a different direction, obviously. I had an interviewee tell me, "Well, my goal is to be in charge and run the place, so if I see a leadership opportunity, I take it. If I think management's weak, I'll step in and step up to the plate. It's my turn, you know? I don't like a weak manager, and I'm more than willing to take over if necessary." I didn't need someone who would be gunning for my job, undermining me, and attempting a management coup. I needed someone who was going to focus on the work at hand and do their job as directed. I also had someone once apply for a weekend position, then tell me they couldn't work weekends due to religious reasons. So their solution was to hire them for a weekday position, then transfer a weekday employee to the weekends. And if I didn't do that, it was religious discrimination, and she'd sue us. Because threatening to sue the hiring manager during a job interview is totally going to get you the position. Alright, now we move into the rapid fire portion of the video for stories too short to make a full entry out of, but too good to leave out. Let's jump in. In a behavioral interview assessing leadership skills, did you enjoy having an intern? Oh yes, I was able to offload lots of work on him. Not a word about mentoring, collaborating, or anything. The person was literally running every question through an AI and reading the output to me. This was during a Zoom interview. They brought their parents to sit in on the interview to, quote, "make sure I'm fair" in my decision-making process. She sat down, plunked her purse on the desk, and started with, "I need to let you know, I have issues." Truly a great start to an interview. Interviewing for an IT position, I asked a basic question about virus removal. "Oh, I don't know, my husband does that." "Well then tell him to apply." She brought in her boyfriend, and the boyfriend was answering all the questions. He pulled his pants down to his knees to fix how his shirt was tucked in. Didn't break eye contact with me as he stood up to do it. So guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I'm ReddList. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.